Welcome to Sunset Boulevard. It's a historical street located at the heart of the most famous city in the world, Los Angeles, California. Taking a walk through it, you may find historical landmarks such as the Walk of Fame, the Paramount Picture Studios, and the Chinese Theater. But for a place of glamour and spectacle, you would never expect to find something quite like this. Hollywood began as a place for the independent filmmaker. It was a place where they could work out their ideas without the constraints from the studios back in the East. Just a few years, it had turned into the biggest landmark of entertainment. But for every story that made it into the big picture, many others would get left in the dust. And perhaps no one knew this better than Billy Wilder. He had spent most of his life escaping from the dangers of war, and even had to start all the way from scratch when he moved to America. But always the proficient type, Billy Wilder was struck gold in 1938 writing the screenplay for the film Ninotchka. Now as an established director and writer, he would go on to direct pictures such as Double Indemnity, Ace in the Hole, The Apartment, and even Marilyn Monroe's iconic The 7-Year Itch. He had become the spotlight of the show, but now was his time to break down everything he ever loved. Now, let's first see how everything started. Our protagonist is Joe Gillis, a down-on-his-luck writer portrayed by William Holden. His daily life consists of avoiding the repo man coming for his car. Meanwhile, he hangs out at the shop's pharmacy and looks for jobs opportunities at Paramount Studios. Sunset Boulevard is, if anything, a movie about Hollywood. Many of the locations featured were typical hotspots for the people working in Hollywood. It is beyond wonder now how Paramount Studios allowed themselves to be featured in what would become one of the most critical films about the filmmaking business. Because for as much as Joe Gillis' life is surrounded by luxury, he's merely just another starving artist. It seemed that any semblance of his career was over before it started.
All right, you wise guys. Why don't you go out and take a crack at Hollywood? Maybe you think that you could make... Uh-oh.
You could call it a series of unfortunate events which catapulted Joe Gillis into the strangest of places.
It was a great big white elephant of a place. The kind crazy movie people built in the crazy 20s.
Which just so happened to be inhabited by the strangest of guests.
You there! Why are you so late? Why have you kept me waiting so long?
This is Norma Desmond, a silent film star portrayed by actual silent film star Gloria Swanson. While she was once a big face of Hollywood, now she's relegated to living in her old mansion, with a larger-than-life personality contrasting with Joe Gillis' more calm demeanor.
Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
I knew there was something wrong.
Things would take an interesting turn as Norma Desmond planned to make a comeback.
I hate that word. It's return.
Now, the old film star and the B-movie writer had made an alliance, and it would only be the beginning of crazier things to come.
It was all very queer. But queerer things were yet to come.
If you had to use two words to describe Norma and Joe, they would be master and mind. Norma sees in Joe an opportunity to return to the spotlight. Meanwhile, Joe sees an opportunity to sustain himself, even if it comes at the cost of his own dignity. Perhaps he should have seen where things were going, but I think that most of us, even in his position, would have not noticed.
It's 10:15. What time are they supposed to get here?
Who?
You're the guest.
There are no other guests. We don't want to share this night with other people. This is for you and me.
Oh?
She fell in love with him.
Has it ever occurred to you that I may have a life of my own? That there may be some girl that I'm crazy about?
But he wasn't in love with her.
What you're trying to say is you don't want me to love you. Say it. Say it.
And like any failed romance, it would lead to tragedy.
Now, the doctor is here.
What doctor? What's going on?
Madame got the razor from your room and she cut her wrists.
She's lying unconscious over here.
Norma Desmond is coming in to see you, Mr. DeMille.
Norma Desmond?
She must be a million years old. I understand she was a terror to work with.
Only toward the end. And, you know, a dozen press agents working overtime can do terrible things to the human spirit.
Things would only grow more turbulent as Joe gave more of his time to please an ever more wacky Norma. It can all seem pretty ridiculous, but when it seems the world has forgotten you, one would be bound to take any form of recognition. But suddenly, it seemed like all the hard work would finally pay off.
Madame is wanted on the telephone.
You know better than to interrupt me.
Paramount is calling.
Who?
Paramount Studios.
Rolling into the Paramount studio lot, you could say that even Gloria Swanson felt herself back at home.
Well, hello, young fella.
Hello, Mr. DeMille.
Here we see Cecil B. DeMille, a real film director and one of the pioneers of Hollywood, as what you see now is the set of the film Sansom and Delilah. And for a very small moment, it seemed that all the eyes of the world were back at Norma Desmond. It was truly as if she had never left. Unfortunately for her, Paramount didn't want to see her.
What's the matter, Max?
I just found out the reason for all those telephone calls from Paramount. It's not Madame they want. It's her car they want to rent.
Not even DeMille had the heart to tell her the truth.
Get Gordon Cole. Tell him to forget about our car. Tell him he can get another old car someplace.
Without any knowledge, Norma was preparing herself for a role that would never come. In the meanwhile, Joe had other plans in his mind.
I was thinking about that girl of Artie's, that Miss Schaefer. She was so like all us writers when we first hit Hollywood.
This is Betty Schaefer, one of the few roles in the career of Nancy Olson. At first she was very critical of Joe's work, but then she found some potential in him and decided to collaborate together.
It's not your career, it's mine. I kind of hope to get in on this deal. I don't want to be a reader all my life. I want to write.
Her youthful passion and idealism end up as the contrast to Norma's more stubborn and delusional attitude. Because for as much as Joe Gillis represents the harsh reality of living as an artist, Betty Schaefer represents that spark of why we love films, the stories we can tell and how we can amaze the audience with it. The only problem would be that this story got a little bit too real.
Why not? Don't you love Artie?
Of course I love him. I always will.
What happened?
You did?
Great stars have great pride.
He should have run away, most of you probably think, but Joe Gillis was already in so much trouble to simply run away from it. So like most people, if he's gonna go down, he's gonna take everything with him.
Well, ask him. Ask him again.
That's right, Betty. Ask me again. This is Joe.
First it was Betty. She had to know the truth of his reality. He even got to show her the new pool he got. The item he always wanted, but it didn't matter anymore. He had lost everything else. It was his time to go away.
Joe!
Joe Gillis is a man who always wanted a pool. In the end, he got one. He just didn't expect to drown it. And Norma Desmond always wanted to have the eyes of the world. She got that too, even if at the worst possible moment.
All right. Camera. Action.
Sunset Boulevard can be described as a cautionary tale. Because for as much as we love or hate Hollywood, all of this is Hollywood in all its fame and glory.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Some of his closest friends describe Los Angeles as a city made for Billy Wilder, because you either made it big or you died trying. So be careful what you wish for, because your biggest dreams could end up becoming a living nightmare.